national helpline at 866-482-LIFE to talk with someone who has been where you are and healed to help others. Your call is confidential. 866-482-LIFE.
Freedom prospers when religion is vibrant and the rule of law under God is acknowledged.
An informed patriot is what we want.
Welcome to American Family Radio's Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity on conservative talk radio.
Muscular Christianity.
Where we relentlessly explore the intersection of truth and politics.
The trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so.
Now, here's your host, Brian Fisher.
Except not this time. Brian Fisher is away. He's taking care of some important business involving relocating, moving, changing his residence. And any of you who've been through that, which that probably includes every single one of you, you know what a daunting task that can be. And he's moving all the way across the country. So, Brian, we're praying for you. May all go well with you insofar as that is even possible in a move. Those things can be just really tough. But I'm sure that by the time the move is over, he is going to be so very, very happy with where he's relocated to. My wife and I relocated about a year and a half ago, changed our residence. And I tell you, folks, it was really a year-long odyssey getting that done, getting the house ready for sale, getting the house sold, getting into the new house, moving everything in. But I'll tell you what, when you make those kinds of moves because you found a place that you really love, it covers all the hassle that goes along with making the change. So just be praying for Brian Fisher. He will be back with you on Focal Point next week. In the meantime, I'm honored to sit in his seat. Now, look, this is Call-In Talk Radio here on Focal Point. I'm sitting in for him, but you can still call me the same way you would have called him. 888-8589-8840 is the number. Make a note of that. I haven't even introduced a single topic yet, but you feel free to just give me a call and be patient until I can get to you. Don't forget, by the way, that we're live streaming on afr.net. Go to afr.net. You can find it. And if anybody you know wants to be able to listen on the radio, then you can go to afr.net/station-finder. Just go to the website and you'll see it on there, and you can find out where all the stations are that are airing our programming. So feel free to do that and pass it along to others who want to catch the programming. We're also on Facebook Live, facebook.com/focal-point-Brian-Fisher. You won't have a hard time finding it. Basically what probably most of you will do is simply go to the search engine and put in Brian Fisher, and you'll come up with exactly what you need, I'm sure, to be able to listen to the program live. Now, the only thing is, right now through Friday, you will not be hearing Brian Fisher's voice. You will be hearing mine, and that's the best I can do for you right now. I can't do Brian, folks. I can only do me. Okay. So I hope that will suffice for the next several days. But I'm enjoying every minute of it, and I hope you are too. The first thing I want to mention today is I have been, to the extent that I've had any time during the day, and I've had bits and pieces here and there, listening to the Mueller testimony to the Congress. And you know, folks, I have to say, I'm almost sickened by what I hear from these Democrats. I really am. And the reason is, look, they spent 2.5 years, they're still doing it, accusing the president of wrongdoing, accusing the president of having colluded with Russia, implying that the election of President Donald Trump is not legitimate. Forget about the 65 million people who voted for him. That doesn't matter because, after all, they're all a bunch of stupid idiots anyway, right? I mean, having voted for Donald Trump, they can't but be that. But more importantly, he probably didn't get all those votes anyway. Russia padded the system, and Russia got Donald Trump elected, so he's not a legitimate president. I mean, folks, this stuff has got to stop. It's just got to stop. And they simply won't stop. They're still beating the same psychotic drum. they're still trying to parse a word here and there. Well, doesn't that imply a conspiracy? Aren't you saying there that the Russians actually impacted our election? And they're still beating the same drum. And folks, look, I was profoundly disappointed by the election of Barack Obama. You hear me? Profoundly disappointed. Because I knew, and I still hold this opinion, that Barack Obama was going to be very, very, very bad for America. And he was. He was. Look, first of all, he was bad for the economy. We limped along at about 1% growth, and we're told this is the new normal, this is the new reality. That's because the man doesn't really believe in the free market system, except when it comes to padding his own pockets. And then he believes in it quite well, apparently. $65 million deal with his book publisher, and I don't hear him saying, we can't take all that money. There comes a time when you've got enough. Haven't heard that out of him lately, but we did hear that pontificating nonsense when he was in office, lecturing people about having too much. But the economy just kind of limped along under his, frankly, socialist leadership. Remember, you didn't build that. Remember, we got to spread the wealth around. He told Joe the plumber, we've got to spread it around, which is a euphemistic way of saying, I've got to take what you've earned and give it to somebody else who didn't work for it. That's really what that's a euphemism for. It's called theft. But here again, if you come from a morally relativistic worldview, which is what socialism and communism and Marxism are, then theft is not bad. I mean, as long as you're stealing from the right people to give to the right people, I mean, that's not really a problem. There's nothing wrong or immoral about that, right? Not stealing is not an absolute principle, is it? When the government does it under the imprimatur of law and they're stealing from the right people, we ought to all applaud. And see, that's the attitude that President Obama had. And he was terrible for the country spiritually and morally because, of course, he accelerated the embrace of homosexuality and the sanctioning of transgenderism. Remember sending out this presidential edict to every school system in the nation, telling them that if any student presents himself as a different gender than the one you've known, you must immediately accommodate that, change the name you use to refer to him. You must hide the records of his former gender from anyone, that they should not be allowed to see it or to know that Jane used to be Johnny, or that Johnny used to be Jane. And he ran around the country lecturing us about how we should admire same-sex relationships and telling us that if his daughter got pregnant, he wouldn't want her punished with a baby. So I wonder, does he view his two daughters as punishment? Well, I guess it's only punishment if you want them. And I guess it's not punishment if you don't. I felt so strongly when he got elected. I mean, it was like being gut punched. And I could see it coming because John McCain was nothing to write home about, and he was no fighter, and neither was Mitt Romney. They're both John McCain's no longer with us, but John McCain when he was alive, and no disrespect meant to the dead, but John McCain was, as far as I'm concerned, he was basically, he was an ideological zero when it comes to the principles upon which this nation was founded. You could not rely on him to uphold them. I remember the famous instance where a man said to him, I'm really afraid for my country if Barack Obama gets elected, because I just don't believe that he understands this country or that he knows what this country needs. And you know what McCain did? He lectured him. Oh, no, he's a good man. Oh, no, he's a good man. Well, the man wasn't saying he's not a good man, whatever that means. He was saying that he would be a bad president. And instead of McCain saying, well, I agree with you, that's why I'm running, he lectures the man about how good President Obama is. I mean, what a wuss. I mean, here again, no disrespect meant to him. He's gone. But I'm talking about when he was alive. That was the posture he took. And Mitt Romney was no better. Mitt Romney was just as weak-kneed as he could be. He's certainly found his backbone in opposing President Trump every chance he gets. But when it came to opposing this socialist Democrat named Barack Obama, oh my goodness gracious. You know, he ran like a scared rabbit. Instead of coming on strong, well, let's face it. You can't come on strong about things that you don't feel strongly about. You know, isn't that the issue? You can't, I mean, unless you're just an Oscar-winning actor, you can't come on strong about the things that you don't feel strongly about. Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. And when Obama started lecturing him about, well, you know, we're not, this is no longer, we're no longer in the Cold War. Can somebody go back to the 1980s and get our foreign policy back? And lecturing him about you know, building up our military forces, and Obama lecturing him about, you know, well, we have these things called ships now and airplanes. And instead of Mitt Romney just rearing up and saying, listen, don't lecture me about the military. That military that you are now so condescending about is the military that kept us from coming under the heel of Nazism. That's the military that kept us from being destroyed by those who wanted to undermine our economy and our way of life through Islamic terrorism. That's the military that fought communism. So don't lecture me about what the military does. I know very well what the military does, but instead he just kind of meekly took it and let Obama ridicule him. And folks, I just didn't want President Obama to be elected. Now, having said that, he was elected. And while I disagreed profoundly with it, I respected the fact that enough Americans voted for him that he was the legitimate president of the United States. Now, I call that, and I'm not patting myself on the back for it because it wasn't easy and I didn't like it, but I call that maturity. I call that the kind of maturity that a free people demonstrate in order to avoid resolving our electoral battles through violence. When the outcome has been arrived at, when the people have spoken, when the votes are counted, and you've lost, you take that loss with graciousness and you move on to the next battle. What you don't do is spend every waking moment trying to delegitimize an election, because in doing so, they're not simply trying to delegitimize Donald Trump, they're trying to delegitimize the entire electoral process and all the people who voted for President Donald Trump, and they're trying to delegitimize the Constitution of the United States, which sets up our electoral system. And now they're trying to undermine that with these state pacts where they're going to try to end run the electoral college vote. And so, folks, really, it is hard to listen to what little bits of the hearing I heard, because all I heard was people who care more about their own party and their own egos and their hatred, their utter hatred for President Donald Trump than they do about America and our way of life and our electoral process and the fact that we have a legitimate president of the United States until and unless the people vote him out in 2020, which I don't think is going to happen, and his 2 terms are served in 2024. Now, that's the way I had to take President Obama. And by the way, I had to sit through 2 such elections. Watch him get elected and reelected. I never said, well, he's not legitimate because after all, this, that, or the other. I mean, see, these folks, these Democrats are so far left, they're so far out, that I really think we've got to start thinking of them as Marxists and socialists and communists, because the only thing that matters to them is the outcome. Well, for us who believe in freedom, the process matters. We participate in it freely, and we respect the outcome. Back in a moment.
Weeping may last for the night, but a shout of joy comes in the morning. My name is Abraham Hamilton III, and this is the Hamilton Minute. An avowed Brexit supporter will now lead the British government for the first time since the United Kingdom voted to leave the European Union. Boris Johnson, the Brexiteer, will replace Theresa May as Prime Minister after winning the leadership of Britain's Conservative Party. He has vowed to lead Britain out of the European Union, with or without a separation deal, by October 31st. Boris Johnson's victory is the latest broadside strike against the ravenous and unyielding efforts of the international globalist cabal to wield power. October 31st may become British Independence Day.
Listen each weekday from 5 to 6 p.m. Central for the Hamilton Corner with Abraham Hamilton III, public policy analyst for the American Family Association.
This is Dr. Richard Land, president of Southern Evangelical Seminary. Welcome to Bringing Every Thought Captive. Last week, I had the privilege of attending the U.S. State Department's second ministerial on religious liberty around the world. This event turned out to be the largest meeting on any human rights issue in the history of the U.S. State Department. Ambassadors and ministers from over 80 countries sent official representatives to this three-day event at the State Department. I cannot tell you how gratifying it was to me to attend this event and experience the excitement and commitment around this issue. 21 years ago, I was actively involved in getting the International Religious Freedom Act passed. This bill was desperately needed because the religious freedom and religious persecution issues were terribly neglected by our State Department. It just wasn't considered that important or relevant. The International Religious Freedom Act did several things. First, it created the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom, which is an independent federal commission, which I was privileged to serve on from 2001 to 2012. This commission makes recommendations to our U.S. government, to the executive branch and the legislative branch, on ways in which U.S. government policy can increase religious freedom in countries around the world. This act also required each American embassy around the world to write an annual report on the state of religious freedom in their country. How has this impacted the culture of the State Department? It has transformed it in really important and significant ways, because these people have now risen to mid-ranks or senior ranks of the State Department, and they've been sensitized to this issue and the fact that it's a growing problem around the world. I'm eager to tell you more about this tomorrow. This is Richard Land.
This is Focal Point with Brian Fisher on American Family Radio.
And we're back. I'm sitting in for Brian E.W. Jackson. The number here is 888. Oh, we got a little vibration going there. A little message being left on my cell phone, sitting on my studio desk. The number here is 888-589-8840. That's 888-589-8840. Of course, don't forget, live streamed on afr.net. Tell a friend, tell a neighbor who may not be anywhere near a radio station that carries the program that they can still listen in quite easily. Now, before we get to the lines, there's one issue that I've been wanting to bring up all week, and I'm going to finally get to it, and that is this. I don't know whether you all are aware of this, but this drag queen story hour stuff is really getting out of hand, which is, of course, exactly what you and I, what Christians would know to be the case, because it's degenerate, it's demented, it's disgusting, it's despicable, it is perverse. You name the adjective that describes just how abysmally dark this mess is, and I will come in complete agreement with you, because this is not an attempt to entertain children. This is an attempt to seduce children into a sexually promiscuous and morally relativistic lifestyle. And no sane parent should allow their children, or their child to be exposed to this degeneracy. This is child abuse as far as I'm concerned. Well, at any rate, in Portland, Oregon, they had to remove photographs that they'd taken of Drag Queen Hour because, and folks, forgive me, this is family programming, but I will tell you this in a way that keeps it, shall we say, as appropriate as possible. That young children had pictures taken of them fondling the drag queen. Yeah, the drag queen was encouraging them. I'm not making this up, folks. This happened in Portland, Oregon. The drag queen was encouraging the children to play with the drag queen. And I'll leave it at that. And photographs of this were taken with the drag queen lying on the floor, outstretched arms, and young children all over the drag queen, and the drag queen encouraging the young children to explore. Now, folks, and please, here again, I've said this before, and I have to make this disclaimer every time. I am a nonviolent person. I love people, and I want to be a blessing to everybody. I'd even like to be a blessing to a drag queen in terms of getting them delivered from that confusion that has them behaving in ways that violate nature and the laws of nature and the moral laws of nature's God. I'd like to help. I'd like to help them. I'm not interested in hurting them. But folks, when you start abusing people's children and you start doing things with people's children, you are asking for trouble. You know, I was with David Barton this past week at a conference out in Colorado with Andrew Womack, and David Barton was there. And one of the things that David Barton talked about at some length is the laws of nature and of nature's God. What he basically said was that God is testified to by nature itself. You see certain inherent laws in nature that mankind expresses in, if we're smart at least, that we express in our legal system. What we call these fundamental rights or God-given rights. Life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, the founding fathers said, are among those rights. They didn't say that was the entire list of rights, that covers the entire panoply, but they said among those God-given rights are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Well, one of the rights that David Barton mentioned, and one of the inherent laws of nature, is that every species defends its young. Every species defends its young. Look, we see reindeer tear. We see whitetail. What am I saying? Reindeer. We see white-tailed deer on our property all the time. We see them all the time. In fact, just last night, my wife and I saw about 9 deer wandering around on our property. And they're just as skittish as they can be. If you get anywhere near them, sometimes, we'll walk outside to get a closer look at them, and they'll stop and look, freeze. But if you make any sudden moves or you come too close, they're gone. But even the white-tailed deer, if you get near their young, they will attack you. They will attack you. And they're just as skittish as they can be. In fact, a friend of mine told me he got near a deer's young, didn't realize how close he was. He said when he looked up, a white-tailed deer was up on its hind legs, using its front legs to attack him and put him in the hospital. Now, I'm simply saying that to say, folks, these LGBTQ people and these leftist people are playing with fire. You don't mess with people's children. Now, true, the likelihood is that the kids taken there are taken there by parents who don't have the sense God gave a gnat, because otherwise they wouldn't take their children to something like this. But suppose some child is in the library, just happens to be in the library at that time, and wanders over, and suddenly this child is being handled by some drag queen. It's just, folks, it's just asking for trouble. And of course, you realize if any parent were to intervene in a situation like that, as I think I described earlier this week, any parent were to intervene with any kind of force, the parent would be accused of a hate crime. No, it's not hate. It's love for my child that makes me want to violently extricate my child from a circumstance which I believe is unhealthy for my child and may cause lasting damage to my child. And frankly, folks, I think this stuff does. It can cause lasting damage to a child's psyche, the child's sense of identity, a clarity about who that child is. No wonder we've got so many children, and they're exaggerating the numbers, but still, to the extent that we've got so many children thinking they're a gender different than the one they were born, when they're hearing all over the place, oh, well, nobody really knows. You don't really know. You have to decide that yourself. Gender is just a social construct. What a load of horse manure. I mean, folks, it's terrible. So, as always, in order for the Portland Library to avoid the backlash, the pictures that they took, which were insensitively posted, were then taken down, because it's just like these gay pride marches, and what they really ought to call them is degeneracy marches, because that's what they are. And I've heard from multiple witnesses who have seen this stuff. They said, yeah, this stuff is unreal. I mean, it is so filthy and so nasty. But the mainstream media cleans it up. They don't show that. No, they show the parents walking with their children. And, oh, isn't it so nice? Oh, this is so wholesome. When in fact, it's about as filthy as it gets. It is the equivalent of the sewer in terms of the moral standards that this thing symbolizes, that these gay marches symbolize. But you'll never see that from the mainstream media because they cleaned it up. Well, Portland tried to clean this up, but too late. Somebody found out exactly what was going on, and they've blown the whistle. Now, but listen to what the Portland Library has said. They said, the library serves a diverse population with a broad range of interests, preferences, and needs. We strive to reflect our community's needs in selecting programs, books, and other materials. Yeah, I mean, folks, you want to talk about doublespeak, about a bunch of nonsense coming out of the mouths of these people when all they're doing is abusing and confusing young children with this garbage. It says concerns about the safety. And by the way, I'm reading from a Breitbart story. Concerns about the safety at the Drag Queen Story Hour made headlines when pro-family organization Houston Mass Resistance discovered drag queen Alberto Gaza, who uses the name Tatiana Malanina when reading to young children, had been convicted in 2008 for sexually assaulting an 8-year-old boy. So now they've got a drag queen, quote unquote, reading to children who is a convicted sexual molester, a pedophile who already has been convicted for sexually assaulting an 8-year-old boy. And the library brings him in to read to children. Now, I'm sorry, folks. I don't believe that that's stupidity or incompetence. I believe that that's intentional. I'm sorry, I believe that's intentional. I believe the point is to get somebody in there who will do what the real point is, which is to sexualize and make available to perverts these children. That's right, I said it and I mean it. And tell me the Houston Public Library didn't have any better sense than that. We've done a children's ministry, folks, and we do background checks on the people who do ministry. And these are people who want to talk to the children about God. You want to bring some sexual pervert into the library and you don't even do a background check, and the guy's a convicted sexual molester? Oh, so sorry about that. We just didn't know. Yeah, you didn't want to know. And the library describes what they're doing as kid-friendly drag. Can you imagine that? Kid-friendly drag. And they say, we encourage kids to look beyond gender stereotypes, and we foster empathy and creativity. Well, that's part of the stereotype. Gays are gay. These sexually perverse people they're really creative. Yeah, they're creative, all right. What we're seeing is they're creative about how to get to your children. That's what they're creative about, which makes them frankly, dangerous. And somebody from the Federalist wrote this: if the event is so innocent and showing such inclusion and queer diversity, why did the library take such aggressive action to remove the photos from public viewing? I wonder why. Because they don't want the average parent to see what they're really up to. That's why. I mean, this is, folks, this stuff is just, calling it nuts and crazy just really doesn't do it justice. Because this is perversion run amok. The American Library Association supports all this stuff. This is what they want. One of the books that they want the drag queens to read to the children, several of the books. Listen to this. These are some of the books that they're reading to children, folks. I'm not making this stuff up. This is why I'm saying this is not an accident. This guy who was a sexual predator, he wasn't reading to these children in Houston by accident. This is intentional. This is the books they're having children read. My Brother's Husband. And here's another one, Lumberjanes, as opposed to lumberjacks. And Pregnant Butch, which folks, I tell you, the Bible says be angry and sin not. Well, I'm angry and I gotta really pray so I don't sin too, because, and folks, thank you for your patience. I'm going to try to get one call in and then we'll spend the rest of the time talking to you all. Getting your calls in. But look, I have a hard time anytime, and I think this is true for any normal human being, when you see children being abused and hurt and misused. I think any normal human being gets angry about that because they're innocent, they're helpless, they're easily preyed upon. And folks, if you want to get on the wrong side of me, there are a few things to get you on the wrong side of me. You want to get on the wrong side of me, you start messing with kids and trying to hurt kids and trying to abuse kids and seduce kids and indoctrinate kids and hurt kids and get kids to go along with all this perverse nonsense. I'm just going to be honest. You are getting on the fighting side of me. You really are. You're getting on the fighting side of me. And, and I've said this before, and I realize we have a legal system and we have due process, and I would never want to see us be any other country. I'm just expressing my, shall we say, my visceral reaction to this stuff. When I hear about somebody having abused a child, raped a child, sexually assaulted a child, kidnapped a child to do things, viscerally my attitude is, when you catch them, just take them out back and shoot them. I mean, because to me, they don't deserve anything more other than say, now listen, you got about 2 minutes to make peace with God, and you can repent and accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, and then at least you get a chance to go to heaven because you're leaving here right now. Now, as a formerly practicing lawyer and as an officer of the court, and as a believer in our Constitution, I believe in due process for all people, but I'm just giving you my visceral reaction to that kind of stuff. And I think normal human beings hate the idea of hurting children. And this is nothing but glorified exploitation of children with some kind of little cute entertainment mask on it. It's nasty, it's vicious, it's ugly, and it needs to stop. And the American Library Association needs to just get a clue, get a revelation, and stop this stuff. We'll be back in a moment.
The following is not an actor, but a real-life story from Trinity Debt Management.
My story begins with debt, a lot of debt, credit card debt, and I heard a commercial for Trinity. I gave them a call.
If you're in debt and you need help, call Trinity at 1-800-788-1813.
When I first called, I was a little embarrassed and kind of ashamed, and I looked at the numbers and I saw how quickly that astronomical debt that was in my life would go away.
Trinity will consolidate your accounts into one easy-to-manage monthly payment, reduce your interest, and possibly improve your credit score. You'll save thousands.
What I would tell other people, please pick up the phone and call Trinity. Just let them put together a program and see how affordable and easy it is to pay off your debt.
Call Trinity at 1-800-788-1813. That's 1-800-788-1813.
It's a little thing. It's just another item on the list of things I need to get for my family. Except that it's American Family Coffee. What's the big deal? You see, when I order a bag of American Family Coffee, I take a stand for godly principles. And that's important to me.
When you choose American Family Coffee, you support the mission of the American Family Association. Thank you. American Family Coffee is available at afastore.net.
AFR's own J.J. Jasper is a morning on-air personality, author, comedian, Christian, and family man. J.J.'s also a keynote speaker at banquets, men's ministry events, pregnancy center fundraisers, and more. Here's what others are saying.
Hi, this is Nancy Westling, Executive Director of the Pregnancy Care Clinic in Salem, Illinois. JJ's helped us set a record for the most funds raised at our banquet.
Information on J.J.'s availability to speak at your event is at jjjasper.com.
Hi, I'm Jan Harper. If you're a pastor's wife, come be encouraged and renewed as we talk about the challenges and stresses unique to pastors and their wives.
The AFA Pastors and Wives Fishbowl Retreat is coming October 8th through 10th to Linden Valley Conference Center in Linden, Tennessee. The retreat is 3 days and 2 nights of relaxation and building relationships. Our hosts will be Pastor Bert Harper, Director of Marriage, Family, and Pastoral Ministries, and co-host of Exploring the Word on AFR, and his wife, Jan. And our special speakers will be J.J. Jasper and Abraham Hamilton III. Lodging, meals, and materials are included in your registration. But hurry, space is limited. Register today by calling 800-326-4543 extension 300. That's 800-326-4543 extension 300 or at repairingthefoundations.net.
The AFA Pastors and Wives Fishbowl Retreat. We'd love to see you there.
American Family Radio.
You're listening to Focal Point with Brian Fisher.
And we're back. This is E.W. Jackson sitting in for Brian Fisher here on Focal Point. And the lines are filling up, and we want to come to you and give you an opportunity to be heard. The number here is 888-589-8840. And let's go right to the calls. We've got Kerry from Louisiana. Welcome, Kerry.
Thank you, sir. I want to thank you for taking a biblical stand for truth. My wife and I attended the Stand for Truth and Liberty Conference in Colorado last week, and it was really outstanding.
Oh, well, wonderful. I'm glad you were there.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I gave you a hug then, and I wish I could give you another one now.
Amen. Thank you, Kerry. Back at you, brother.
Yes, thank you. The issue is on gay marriage. In Louisiana, we have 2 marriage laws that are on the book, a traditional marriage, but we also have a covenant marriage law, which was enacted in 1997. It requires that you get counseling before you can get a divorce, and it lasts a longer period of time, too. Only 2 other states have the law, Arkansas and Arizona. With your legal background, I was wondering, is that a law that could possibly be amended so it only be between a man and a woman?
Well, Kerry, unfortunately, and I think this is a perversion of our legal system as well, but unfortunately, the Supreme Court has declared that marriage is a fundamental right, no matter what the genders. And I'm not sure how far that goes, but that means that the Supreme Court has declared that any attempt to restrict marriage in any way between two people of different genders, male and female, is against the law. I just don't think that that's what the Founding Fathers had in mind. I don't think the Founding Fathers ever had in mind for vast social changes to be implemented by decisions of the Supreme Court. I believe that Supreme Court decisions were meant to simply deal with cases and controversies that couldn't be resolved in lower courts. And this is between people, between a plaintiff and a defendant. This is something entirely different that we've gotten to, where the Supreme Court is making these sweeping, in my view, judicially tyrannical decisions to force things upon the American people that by vote in what I think it was 30 states, well over. I mean, 60% of the states had already voted to define marriage as a union between one man and one woman. And along comes the Supreme Court and says, well, you know what, too bad. You're wrong, and we're going to impose this. And they did the same thing with abortion. So from a legal perspective, probably not. And I'm not sure how we resolve that until we either get Supreme Court justices who really understand that the Supreme Court's job is not to try to change culture, but to leave that to the American people. And we go back to letting states resolve these issues, or we have some kind of constitutional amendment that clarifies the limitations of the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court. I think, unfortunately, we're stuck with marriage legally, not spiritually or morally, because spiritually and morally, there's no such thing as a marriage between two men or two women. It doesn't exist in the sight of God, but apparently it exists in the sight of the Supreme Court. So, yeah, we live with that for now. But thanks for the call, Kerry, and hope to see you sometime again soon, brother. God bless you. Let's go to Don in Arkansas. Don, welcome.
Well, thank you for taking my call, and Semper Fi.
Semper Fi.
Yes. I tried to call last week, and I just got on the phone too late. Did you say last week something to the effect that the straight, white, adult male is the most discriminated against person in this country?
Well, I don't know that I said the most discriminated against person in this country, but I have made statements to the effect that from the left's perspective, they have, shall we say, amended Marx's class warfare and turned it into racial warfare. And the bourgeoisie in Marx's Communist Manifesto is now white people in general, the white male specifically. So yes, for leftists, the white male is a target of their opprobrium, their slandering, their vilification. And I did say this, and I say it somewhat humorously, but there's a real serious point to it. Say, I never thought I'd see the day when I'd be defending white people, but here we are, because that's where the left has gone. They've turned this into some kind of racial war on whites, as if white people are the repository of all evil and people who are not white are the repositories of all good, when the Bible says there is none righteous, no, not one. All have sinned and come short of the glory of God. And I've said, nobody has a monopoly on sin and evil, and nobody has a monopoly on good and righteousness, because all human beings are flawed and subject to wrongdoing. But by the grace of God, Jesus Christ helps us to transcend that sin and to live a life that is pleasing to Him, and that has nothing whatsoever to do with race. So, I mean, I didn't quite say what you just said, but that I've just expressed it my way.
Okay. Yeah, just wanted to clarify. Just didn't want to misquote you or anything like that.
Okay. All right, brother. Well, thank you for calling and getting the clarification, because sometimes people run off and quote you as having said something that you didn't say. But here again, I just think that the left has just gone berserk with this racial stuff. They've just gone berserk. Quote unquote, people of color, and I don't like that expression either, because all people have color. Yeah, get that one. You got that straight off the presses from E.W. Jackson. All people have color. But nevertheless, the left tries to divide us between people of color and white people. And the fact of the matter is, people are just people. There's no genetic, there's no collective gene for good or evil. Just let me give you a perfect example. You all forgive me, I'm going to go right back to the phones. But the way they always portray, the white man came and destroyed the Indians. And I know, look, there were abuses. I know that. There's no question. I mean, even, and I'm not comparing buffalo to Indians, but even the abuse of the buffalo on the plains, I mean, all of that stuff clearly was wrong. But the idea that Europeans came to this country and the Indians were just here, just a bunch of friendly people living in the garden like Adam and Eve, and along came the Europeans and ruined everything and made everything violent. They were killing each other before Europeans ever got here. And they killed Europeans when they got here. They were as bloodthirsty. I mean, part of what led to, shall we say, the genocidal efforts were the fact that people moving into the West were not able to do so safely because Indians, Native Americans, felt that they were encroaching on their land, and one of their responses was mass murder. Now, I'm not trying to down Native Americans, but I'm just saying Native Americans aren't any better than anybody else. I mean, this idea that, oh, the Europeans, oh, they're terrible, but those wonderful, those noble Native Americans. Now, look, there's nobility in all people, and there is flawed humanity in all people. You know, let's just, if we could just keep that straight and just deal with people as individuals instead of these collective identities we try to impose on people, our country would be so much better off. And that's going to mean defeating the left and their ideology and their racism and their balkanization of the country. Okay, sorry about that, folks. Let's go right back to the phones. We've got Selena, I believe, of Georgia.
That's correct. How are you?
Hi, Selena.
Hi. I'm going to try to choose my words wisely here because this whole drag queen in the library thing is, I'm about to come out of my skin. I'm a grandmother. I have 6 grandchildren, and this is very disturbing to me.
Yeah.
As I was reading from the same article that you were referring to earlier from Breitbart, and these are tax-funded public libraries. They have no business promoting sexual perversion, gender conversion, and pornography to children. That's a quote by Matt Staver from the article. He's from the Liberty Council chairman. We don't want this. We don't want this in our. We fund these public places. We should have the right to say what is and is not allowed. I'm letting my emotions get the best of me here because they have poked Mama Bear with this kind of stuff and pushed the line. They haven't pushed it. They've gone over it. And this is not about liberals versus conservatism and their viewpoint. This is evil versus good. Okay? They want our children. They're trying to steal the hearts and minds of our children. And there's a quote on the wall in the sanctuary of our church in Albany that says, whoever wants the next generation the most will get them. I want to know how I can stand up and do my part and confront these people and shut them down. Tell me what to do. I know it's in Oregon and I'm in Georgia, but, you know, it's coming to us. It's coming.
Well, let me tell you something, Selena. There are a lot of good organizations out there, but since you asked me, STAND is setting up chapters all over the country to do just that, to stand against this mess. And if you're interested, we've got a sort of a blueprint for how you do that. It doesn't require money. It just requires people deciding, you know what, we're going to take a stand. We're simply not going to put up with this stuff. Now, let me give you a perfect example, and stand by, Marie. I'll be right with you. When I was pastoring in Boston, and a group decided that they were going to hand out literature to elementary school children, this GLAD group, the Gay Lesbian Alliance Defense something or other, and we went up to confront them and to sort of do a counter-protest. And they told us, they said, well, you straight parents aren't going to teach your children what's right, and we're going to make sure that they get the information that they need. And they were giving them these pamphlets, giving elementary school children a pamphlet which had 2 men kissing on one, 2 women kissing on the other, one of these in a romantic kissing embrace. And then at the bottom they said, people tell you that there's something wrong with being gay, don't listen, just do it. That's what they were giving out to elementary school children. And we went up and took a stand and called attention to it. And of course, most of the people agreed with us. The mainstream media downplayed it, and the public school system downplayed it, but most of the people agreed with us, and they had to stop doing it because, of course, as Selena just said, you poke Mama Bear, you poke Papa Bear about their children, and you could have a problem. And I got criticized, oh my goodness. And I still get criticized by these leftists, these gays and lesbians, as they call themselves, these homosexuals. I still get criticized by them. Oh, so in other words, you're saying that you have a right to get violent because somebody's trying to tell your child what you don't want them to know. You know what? I don't think right has anything to do with it, having the right. I know one thing. You start stepping between me and my minor child with things that I don't want my minor child exposed to, and you tell me it's none of my business, we're going to have a problem. I mean, I'm just being straight up. We're going to have a problem because you don't feed them. They're not yours. But, you know, what I've said about this is this. You're dealing with a group of people who don't understand parenthood because they've rejected the fundamental proposition by which parenthood happens. And so they don't understand that visceral, biological, psychological bond that people have and that protective impulse that people have for their children. I don't think they have that. I don't think they experience that. And I think it's strange and foreign to them. So I've been condemned for it. But I know one thing. If a person did that and then I say, well, no, you're not going to do that with my child, and they reached out to take my child or to say, now, wait a minute, you don't have a right. I've got a right to tell your child. They're going to probably get knocked out. I mean, look, folks, I'm just being honest. You're going to probably get knocked out. You're going to probably get hurt. But I don't think, frankly, they care. They're so blinded by their sexual perversion and the hope that even if you do something like that, it will redound against you because, oh, the homophobe went and beat up a gay and oh, I mean, that's what you'd get. That's what that's how the mainstream media would treat it. You're the victimizer. They're the victim, and you bully, and how dare you? But you know, they wouldn't even talk about the fact that some person's trying to seduce and pervert and indoctrinate your child. That wouldn't even come into it. I mean, it's bizarre, folks. Let's see if we can get Marie in. Marie, sorry about this. We're running a little late, but Marie, come on, you get your word in there.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I just wanted to say that, you know, the devil is loose. And people are blind. They're blind. They don't see that the devil is loose in this country especially. The extreme media, they say that illegal alien children are being abused, but they don't see all these American children in the schools and everywhere else, church, everywhere else they're being abused. They don't see American children.
Wow,
they don't see what's going on with abortion, killing children, the killing of children. They don't see this city like where I'm calling from that's selling marijuana, children's candy, marijuana, and giving it to, the parents are giving it to children, and they're selling it to children, everybody in this city.
All right, Marie, you got your point across. I appreciate you calling, and you brought us full circle because we have a president of the United States who's trying to put America and Americans first, and the left hates it because they're internationalists who think we ought to put everybody else first. I got to go, folks. Thank you for listening. I'll be back again tomorrow. Remember, we cannot be defeated if we will not quit because we are on God's side.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.